I heard her speaking in a language she thought I didn't understand, and that's when I knew everything was calculated. Within weeks, a pattern emerged: the cold laughs during our family dinners, the way she fingered my mother's diamond ring when she thought no one was watching, the promises she whispered to my son about their future while her phone buzzed with texts in French. You'd think I would have warned him immediately, told my sweet, trusting Ethan that his fiancée was a fraud. But instead, I chose a different path, a crueler one perhaps. I waited until Christmas Eve, when he planned to propose with our family heirloom, to destroy them all. My name is Rachel Monroe, and I've lived in this Charlotte suburb for 22 years, long enough to know which neighbors water their lawns at dawn and whose marriages are held together by Thursday wine clubs. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks before Christmas. I was polishing my grandmother's silver, the set she'd carried from Poland wrapped in her wedding dress, when Ethan's name lit up my phone screen. Mom, I need to tell you something. His voice carried that breathless quality I recognized from when he was 8, rushing to show me a perfect test score. I'm going to propose, Christmas Eve, at your dinner. The polishing cloth stilled in my hand. Outside, December wind rattled the kitchen windows, and I could smell the neighbor's fireplace smoke creeping through the sealed frames. To Elodie. Who else? He laughed, that easy sound that reminded me why I'd spent years protecting him from sharp edges. Mom, she's everything. Smart, sophisticated. She gets my work jokes. And that accent, God, when she speaks French, I just melt. I knew that accent, had practiced one myself during 2 years in Lyon, back when I thought adventure meant teaching English abroad instead of raising a son alone after David's heart attack. But I kept my voice steady, maternal. When do I get to meet this everything? This weekend, Saturday dinner. She's dying to meet you. Keeps asking about family traditions, the house, everything. She really wants to be part of us. Mom. The silver spoon reflected my face, distorted and stretched. Of course, darling. 7 o'clock. After he hung up, I walked to the dining room where David's mother's ring sat in its velvet box on the top shelf of the china cabinet. 3 carats, Art Deco setting, worth more than my car. Ethan had mentioned it twice already, testing whether I'd kept my promise to save it for his bride. I touched the box, thinking of my son's voice, how it lifted when he said her name. Saturday arrived wrapped in unseasonable warmth. I'd made coq au vin, a test of sorts, and opened the 2015 Bordeaux I'd been saving. When the doorbell rang at 7:03, I smoothed my dress and prepared my mother's smile, the one that assessed while appearing to welcome. She was smaller than her photos suggested, with that deliberate delicacy some women cultivate like bonsai trees. Dark hair pulled into a chignon that looked effortless but probably took 40 minutes, the kind of cheekbones that photographed well from every angle. Her hand, when she extended it, was soft as tissue paper. Mrs. Monroe, I am so pleased. The accent wrapped around my name like silk, not quite Parisian, something more southern, maybe Provence. Ethan speaks of you constantly. Behind her, my son glowed like a kid at Christmas. His hand rested on her lower back with the kind of possession that made my chest tight. Mom, this is Elodie Laurent. She handed me a bottle of wine, a good one. I noted, not the grocery store variety, and slipped off her coat to reveal a dress that cost more than most people's rent. Your home is beautiful. So much history in these walls. Faux. We moved to the living room, where she admired the family photos with what seemed like genuine interest, asking about David, about Ethan's childhood, about the house's heritage. She knew things, small details Ethan must have mentioned, and wove them into conversation like she'd been studying for an exam. During dinner, she ate with European precision, cutting her meat into small, identical pieces. She complimented the coq au vin in French, assuming I wouldn't understand. Pas mal pour une Américaine. Not bad for an American. I smiled and passed the bread, watching her fingers drum against her wine glass when she thought I was looking at Ethan. She had tells. This one. The way her eyes catalogued the silver, the paintings, the visible markers of comfortable widowhood. Elodie was just promoted, Ethan announced, refilling her wine. Senior consultant at her firm. International business development, she added, touching his hand. Though really, what matters is being close to Ethan. Love makes everything else secondary. Non. That's when her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and for just a moment, her mask slipped. The soft expression hardened into something calculating before reassembling itself into apology. Pardonnez-moi, work never sleeps. She excused herself to the powder room, leaving her phone face down on the table. Ethan was telling me about their weekend trip to Asheville, hands moving as he talked. So alive with love, he didn't notice when her phone lit up again. The message preview, in French, was brief but clear. Combien de temps encore? How much longer when she returned, perfume refreshed, smile precisely calibrated. I served the tarte tatin I'd made from scratch. She took one bite and declared it better than her grandmother's, and I watched my son fall a little more in love while something cold and certain settled in my stomach like a stone. The call that changed everything came the following Thursday. I was wrapping Christmas presents in the guest room when I heard Elodie's voice drifting up from the garden. She must have thought the house was empty, my car was at the shop, and I'd been quiet as a mouse all morning. Her French was rapid, casual, nothing like the careful phrases she'd used at dinner. Oui, le timeline reste le même. Mariage en mars, divorce dans 18 mois? Yes, the timeline remains the same. Marriage in March, divorce in 18 months. My hands stilled on the ribbon I was tying. Le fils est parfait ingénieur, naïf, famille aisée. La mère est veuve, elle a des biens immobiliers. The son is perfect engineer, naive, comfortable family. The mother is a widow with real estate assets. I crept to the window, watching her pace beneath the bare oak trees. She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Non, non, il croit que c'est le grand amour. Les Américains sont si sentimentaux. No, no, he thinks it's true love. Americans are so sentimental. Then came the words that made my blood crystallize. Après le divorce, j'aurai la carte verte et au moins 300 000, peut-être plus avec la bague de famille. After the divorce, I'll have the green card and at least 300,000, maybe more with the family ring. My legs gave out. I sat on the guest bed surrounded by half-wrapped presents, trying to reconcile the woman destroying my son's future with the charming creature who'd praised my cooking. The call continued for another 10 minutes, details about bank accounts, immigration lawyers, someone named Marcel who would play her father at the wedding. When her footsteps faded, I remained frozen, staring at the gift I'd bought her, a silk scarf from Paris, because I'd wanted to welcome her properly. My hands shook as I reached for my phone, then stopped. If I called Ethan now, what would I say? That his girlfriend was a fraud. He'd demand proof. She'd cry, spin some story about misunderstandings, language barriers. I'd become the bitter mother who couldn't let go. No, I needed evidence, real evidence. That evening, I called my niece Claire. She worked for the state's immigration department, not in enforcement, but in visa processing. We met for coffee the next morning at a place downtown where nobody knew us. Hypothetically, I began, watching steam curl from my cup. If someone were to marry for a green card, what would the signs be? Claire's eyes sharpened. She'd always been quick. Hypothetically short courtship, usually under 6 months. Age gaps or financial disparities. Previous marriages that ended right after permanent residency was granted. Why? I told her about the phone call. Her face went through several expressions before landing on fury. That bitch. Sorry. Aunt Rachel. But that absolute bitch. I need proof. Claire. Real proof. She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. You need a private investigator. Someone who specializes in background checks, immigration fraud. I know someone, Noah Grant. He's discreet, thorough. Former FBI. FBI. White-collar division. He's seen every scam there is. She pulled out her phone. I'll text you his number. Aunt Rachel, you have to stop this. I will. The words came out harder than intended. But I need to do it right. One chance to show Ethan the truth. That afternoon, I met Noah Grant in a sterile office building near the airport. He was younger than expected, maybe 40, with the kind of forgettable face that probably served him well. He listened without interrupting while I explained the situation, occasionally making notes in precise handwriting. International romance scams are more common than people think, he said when I finished. The accent helps. Makes Americans feel sophisticated, chosen. Your son's not stupid. Mrs. Monroe. These people are professionals. Can you find proof? I can find the truth. Whether that constitutes proof depends on what's there. He quoted his rate, which made me blink. But I thought of Ethan's face at dinner. How happy he'd looked. I'll need everything you have on her. Full name, phone number, employer, previous addresses, any documents she's shared. I handed over the folder I'd prepared screenshots from social media, the business card she'd given me, photos Ethan had sent. Noah studied them like evidence at a crime scene. Give me a week, maybe 2. These operations usually have patterns, previous victims. If she's done this before, and they always have, I'll find it. Driving home, I stopped at the church where David and I had married 30 years ago. I sat in the empty sanctuary, staring at the stained glass windows, and tried to justify what I was about to do. Spying on my son's girlfriend, hiring investigators, plotting like some character in a thriller novel. But then I remembered her voice on that call, the casual cruelty of it. Naïve. She'd called my brilliant, kind son naive. A mark, a pathway to papers and money. That night, Ethan called to confirm Christmas Eve dinner. Mom, I've got the ring. Had it sized and cleaned. It's perfect. Your grandmother would be happy. I managed. Elodie's planning to wear her grandmother's dress. Something blue, for tradition. I wondered if there was a grandmother, if there was even an Elodie Laurent, or if my son had fallen in love with a fiction, a performance designed to separate him from everything I'd spent decades building for him. Mom, you there? Yes, darling. Just thinking about Christmas. It's going to be unforgettable. Noah's first report arrived 6 days later, hand-delivered to my door at 8:15 a.m., while the neighborhood still slept. He stood on my porch in a forgettable gray suit, holding a manila envelope that felt heavier than paper should. Coffee, I offered, needing the ritual of normalcy. Black, thanks. He followed me to the kitchen, spreading documents across my breakfast table like tarot cards revealing a terrible future. Your instincts were correct. Elodie Laurent doesn't exist. The words hit like cold water, even though I'd expected them. What do you mean? The woman dating your son is using that name, but there's no record of an Elodie Laurent matching her description entering the country. The social security number she's using belongs to a dead woman in Maine. Her supposed employer, International Business Solutions, is a shell company registered in Delaware with a virtual office. I stared at a photocopy of her business card, the embossed letters I'd traced with my finger. So, who is she? Still working on that. But I found something else. He pulled out another document. 3 similar cases, different states, same pattern, women with French or Italian accents, targeting professional men in their 30s. Short courtships, marriages lasting exactly 24 months, just long enough to secure permanent residency, then divorce proceedings citing irreconcilable differences. The settlements? Between $200,000 and $400,000 each time, plus alimony for a few years, always just below the threshold that would trigger serious scrutiny. He showed me photos from social media, wedding pictures, different women, but something similar in their poses, their smiles, professional. This is organized, Mrs. Monroe, not a single person but a network. I picked up one wedding photo. The groom looked like Ethan's same earnest eyes, same obvious adoration. What happened to these men? Financially damaged but recovered, emotionally. He shrugged. One attempted suicide. Another hasn't dated in 3 years. The third moved to Alaska and cut off contact with everyone. My coffee had gone cold. Outside, I could hear my neighbor starting his leaf blower, the sound drilling into my skull. Can you find who she really is? I'm tracking the money. These operations always have financial trails. She's been making deposits to an account that links to others. Western Union transfers to Romania, of all places. But here's what's interesting. He pulled out phone records. She makes regular calls to a number in Quebec. Same number appears in the other cases. The handler. Most likely, these aren't independent operators. Someone recruits them, trains them, provides the documentation. He gathered the papers. Mrs. Monroe, we need to discuss next steps. We have enough to warn your son. Maybe enough for law enforcement to investigate. No. The word came out sharp. Not yet. If we move too soon, she'll disappear, set up somewhere else, find another victim. And Ethan. I thought of my son's pride, his careful heart. He won't believe it without absolute proof. He'll think I manufactured this because I'm jealous, possessive. Noah studied me. So, what do you want? Everything. Her real name, her associates, the whole network. And I want it by Christmas Eve. That's 2 weeks away. She's planning to get engaged Christmas Eve. My mother's ring, at my dinner table, in front of my family. The rage I'd been suppressing surfaced, hot and pure. If we're going to destroy her, I want it to be complete, public, undeniable. He was quiet for a moment. That's a dangerous game. These people don't take kindly to exposure. Neither do I. That afternoon, Elodie called me herself. Her timing was almost supernatural, as if she could sense threat. Rachel, I hope I'm not disturbing. I wanted to discuss Christmas dinner. I know how important family traditions are. I forced warmth into my voice. How thoughtful. What did you have in mind? My parents will be in town, from Nice. I thought perhaps they could join us. They're so eager to meet Ethan's family. Parents. Of course she'd have parents. Props in her elaborate theater. That would be lovely. The more the merrier. You're so kind. Ethan is lucky to have such a welcoming mother. She paused. I know this is fast. Our relationship. You must have concerns. I gripped the phone tighter. Love doesn't follow timelines. Exactly what I told Papa. He's old-fashioned, you understand. But when you know, you know. Her laugh tinkled like broken china. I knew the moment I met Ethan. He's everything I've dreamed of. And what did you dream of? Exactly. A pause. So slight I might have imagined it. A good man, honest, hard-working. Someone who values family, stability, the things that matter. After she hung up, I wrote down everything she'd said, then called Noah. She's bringing parents to Christmas dinner. Actors, most likely, or other members of the network. Mrs. Monroe. This is escalating. Good. The more people involved, the bigger the takedown. I walked to the window, watching storm clouds gather. Can Claire help with the immigration angle? Already on it. She's pulling records, looking for patterns in visa applications. Off the books, of course. And you, I have a lead on her real identity. A woman in Baltimore thinks she recognizes her from the photos. Same woman tried to marry her brother 2 years ago, but he got suspicious when she couldn't remember details about her supposed hometown. What name was she using? Sylvie Dubois. Before that, possibly Marie Beaumont in Philadelphia. He paused. Mrs. Monroe, I need to bring in additional resources. Surveillance, deeper background checks. It'll cost. I don't care about money. Your son might, when this is over. I thought about Ethan at 8, crying over a bird that had flown into our window. At 15, spending his weekends tutoring kids in math for free. At 25, holding my hand through the endless night after David's funeral. My son will survive this, but only if we do it right. Only if he can't deny the truth. That evening, I attended my book club, smiling through discussions of wine and literary symbolism while my mind planned destruction. Karen Hendricks mentioned seeing Ethan and his gorgeous girlfriend at the farmer's market. How perfect they looked together. Wedding bells soon? She asked with that hungry look of suburban gossips. Oh, you never know with young love, I replied, sipping my Pinot Grigio and imagining her face when the truth came out, when everyone knew what I'd protected my son from, because that was the real plan forming in my mind, not just to expose Elodie or whatever her name was, but to do it so spectacularly, so thoroughly, that the entire network would collapse. No more weddings, no more broken men in Alaska, no more family rings in the hands of criminals. 2 weeks until Christmas Eve. 2 weeks to gather every weapon I needed. The hunt was on. The plan crystallized on a Wednesday morning, 10 days before Christmas. Noah, Claire, and I sat in a private room at the Charlotte Public Library, documents spread across the table like battle plans. The librarian had given us the space meant for genealogy research. If only she knew we were tracing a different kind of family tree, a criminal one. Her real name is Anca Petrescu, Noah announced, sliding a Romanian passport copy across the table. 28 years old, from Bucharest. Entered the country 4 years ago on a student visa that expired 3 years ago. Claire studied the immigration records she'd pulled. She's been married twice, once in Oregon, once in Maryland. Both marriages ended exactly 24 months after the wedding date. The parents? I asked. Marcel and Simone Laurent are actually Dmitry and Irina Volkov, small-time actors from Montreal who specialize in this kind of thing. They've played parents, business partners, even doctors when needed. Noah showed us their photos distinguished, silver-haired, perfectly cast for the role of French parents. I traced Anka's real photo with my finger. Without the careful makeup and styling, she looked harder, hungrier. So, Christmas Eve? Christmas Eve, Noah confirmed. But Rachel, we need to discuss the execution. How public do you want this? I'd been thinking about this, weighing my son's humiliation against the need for undeniable proof. Public enough that she can't talk her way out of it. Private enough that Ethan doesn't become a viral video. Claire pulled out her laptop. I have an idea. My colleague at the Virginia Immigration Enforcement Unit owes me a favor. What if they happened to be investigating a tip about marriage fraud? They could arrive during dinner, ask some questions. Very professional, very official. Would they arrest her? Not immediately, but they'd document everything, start a formal investigation. Once that happens, she'll either run or try to accelerate her timeline. Claire's eyes gleamed. Either way, Ethan sees her true colors. Noah shook his head. Too soft. These people are cockroaches. You shine a light, they scatter and regroup. We need to destroy the entire network. What are you suggesting? He pulled out a different file. I've identified at least 12 women running similar scams across the country, all connected to the same handler in Quebec, a man named Constantine Bogdan. He takes 40% of every settlement. If we can flip Anka, get her to testify about the operation. She won't flip, I said, remembering that cold laugh in my garden. She's not the type. Everyone flips with the right pressure. Noah's smile was sharp. Claire, what's the penalty for immigration fraud? Up to 5 years in prison, $250,000 fine? But if we can prove organized crime connections, it gets federal. That's 10 to 20. I stood, walked to the window overlooking the parking lot where normal people were living normal lives. I want her to confess. At dinner. In front of everyone. That's ambitious, Noah said carefully. She's arrogant, thinks Americans are sentimental fools. If we set the stage right, make her feel secure, triumphant even. I turned back to them. Can we tap her phone? Legally, no, but I can have someone near enough to intercept calls, document who she's talking to. Noah made a note. What about your son? How do we keep him from proposing before we're ready? That was the part that hurt most. I'll delay him. Tell him I want to polish the ring. Have it blessed. Something. He'll give it to me if I ask. Claire closed her laptop. We need backup plans. What if she suspects something? She already should suspect something, I said. I've been too accepting, too welcoming. A widow with money should be more protective. I smiled. the expression feeling foreign on my face. Tomorrow, I'll start being the mother-in-law she expects. Suspicious, asking questions about her family, her background. She'll think she's winning me over by Christmas. And the actual dinner. I'd been planning this part obsessively. 7 o'clock arrival. Drinks in the living room where I can control the seating. Her parents at one end. Anka and Ethan in the middle, where everyone can see them. I'll invite my neighbors. The Hendricks Karen can't keep a secret, which means whatever happens will be all over the neighborhood by Boxing Day. Witnesses. Noah approved. What else? At 8:30, after dinner but before dessert, that's when Ethan planned to propose. Instead, that's when your immigration contact arrives. Claire, professional routine check. They ask about her visa status, her work, how she met Ethan. Claire nodded. She'll lie. They always do. And then, I continued, Noah's surveillance will matter. We'll have recordings of her real calls, evidence of the money transfers. Your contact can present it all right there. What about the parents? The fake ones? Let them run, I said. They're small fish, but I want video of them running, abandoning their daughter when things get serious. Noah gathered his papers. You understand this will destroy your relationship with Ethan, at least temporarily. I'd wrestled with this through sleepless nights. If I do nothing, he marries her. In 18 months, she divorces him, takes half his assets, and disappears. He spends years recovering financially and emotionally. This way, it's one horrible night instead of years of pain. Assuming he sees it that way, he will. Eventually. I had to believe that. Had to believe my son would understand that sometimes love means being the villain in someone else's story. Claire stood, checking her phone. I need to go. But Rachel, are you sure about this? Once we start, there's no going back. I thought about David, how he would have handled this. He was the gentle one, the peacemaker, but he also taught Ethan to stand up to bullies, to protect what mattered. She picked my family, my son, my mother's ring. She made it personal the moment she said his name. After they left, I sat alone in the genealogy room, surrounded by the tools people used to trace their legitimate families. The irony wasn't lost on me. In 10 days, I'd be destroying a fake family to save my real one. That evening, Ethan came for dinner, alone. Thank God. He was buzzing with excitement, showing me apartments he'd found for after the wedding, talking about honeymoon plans. Mom, can I ask a favor? He pulled out the ring box. Could you get this blessed? I know it's silly, but Elodie mentioned she'd love that tradition. I took the box, my grandmother's ring heavy in my hand. Of course, darling. You like her. Right. Really like her. I looked at my son, my beautiful, trusting boy who still believed in love at first sight and happily ever after. I think she's exactly what she appears to be. He hugged me then, tight and warm, smelling like the cologne I'd bought him last Christmas. I love you, Mom. I know this is fast, but when you know, you know. Yes, I said into his shoulder, holding him close while I still could. When you know, you know. Christmas Eve arrived wrapped in unseasonable fog, the kind that made Charlotte feel like a gothic novel. By 4:30 p.m., my house glowed with strategic warmth, candles on every surface, jazz standards playing softly, the dining room table set with the wedding china David's mother had given us. I'd spent 3 hours on the centerpiece alone, white roses and holly arranged to frame where Ethan would have proposed. The turkey was already golden in the oven, filling the house with the scent of herbs and butter. I'd made everything from scratch sweet potato souffle, green beans with almonds, cranberry sauce that had simmered for 2 hours, the kind of meal that suggested tradition, stability, everything a con artist would want to marry into. At 5:45, Noah called from his car. We're set. I have eyes on her apartment. She left 15 minutes ago with the parents. They're driving separately, which is good for us. And Claire. Her contact will arrive at 8:30 sharp. Officer Martinez. Very official. Very thorough. He's bringing a partner for backup. I checked my reflection in the hall mirror. Black dress, pearls, the picture of elegant widowhood. My hands were steady as I applied lipstick, though my heart hammered against my ribs like a caged bird. The Hendricks arrived first, at 6:50. Karen had outdone her self-sequined dress. Enough perfume to choke a horse, that eager expression of someone expecting gossip. "Rachel, darling, everything looks magical." She air-kissed me while her husband Tom headed straight for the bar I'd set up. "We're so honored to be here for the big moment." If only she knew which moment she'd actually witness. Ethan arrived at 7:05, nervous energy radiating from every pore. He'd gotten a haircut, worn the suit I'd bought him for his promotion. "Mom, you have the ring." "In the study, darling, safe and blessed." The lie came easily now. The ring was actually in my bedroom, locked in the safe with documentation Noah had provided copies of marriage certificates, bank records, surveillance photos, evidence for after. "She's on her way," he said, checking his phone for the 100th time. "Her parents, too. You'll love them, Mom. They're so cultured." At 7:12, the doorbell rang. I let Ethan answer it while I gripped the kitchen counter, breathing through the surge of adrenaline. This was it. The beginning of the end. "Joyeux Noël." Elodie's voice carried through the house like silver bells. She entered the kitchen in a cream dress that looked vintage, probably calculated to seem like an heirloom. "Rachel, you look beautiful, and something smells divine." She kissed both my cheeks, and I caught her scent. Chanel No. 5, of course. Classic, expensive, trustworthy. Everything she pretended to be. "Let me introduce my parents," she said, guiding in the couple Noah had identified as the Volkovs. They were perfect him in a well-tailored suit with a slight stoop that suggested old European dignity. Her in elegant navy with a rope of pearls that looked real. "Madame Monroe," the man said, taking my hand with a slight bow. "Marcel Laurent, we are so grateful for your hospitality." His French accent was flawless, more authentic than his daughter's. I wondered how many times they'd played this scene. "Please, call me Rachel," I said, leading them to the living room where the Hendricks waited like eager audience members. Introductions were made, drinks distributed. I'd made sure to use the good crystal, the kind that sang when you tapped it. Elodie kept touching Ethan his hand, his shoulder, his knee-marking territory with each gesture. Her mother, Simone, admired the family photos with practiced interest. "Such a beautiful family," she said, lingering on David's picture. "Your late husband. Yes, Ethan has his eyes." "Yes," I managed, watching her calculate how long I'd been widowed, what I might have inherited. Tom Hendricks. 3 bourbons in, started telling stories about Ethan as a child. Remember when he built that robot for the science fair? Kid was always too smart for his own good. "He still is," Elodie said, gazing at my son with such perfectly calibrated adoration that even I almost believed it. Always working late, solving problems. I have to remind him to eat sometimes. At 7:45, we moved to the dining room. I'd arranged the seating precisely Ethan at the head where his father used to sit, Elodie to his right where everyone could see her, the fake parents across from them, the Hendricks at the far end like a Greek chorus. The turkey was perfect, pink in the center, skin crackling. Marcel made a show of carving it, telling a charming story about Christmas markets in Nice while his hands moved with practiced precision. I watched Elodie watch him, saw the tiny nod of approval she gave. "This reminds me of home," Simone said, tasting the cranberry sauce. "Though we use orange zest in ours?" "How long are you visiting?" Karen asked, always hungry for details. "Through New Year," Marcel replied. "We wanted to spend time getting to know Ethan. After all, if things progress as we hope." He raised his glass meaningfully. "To family," Elodie said, raising her own glass. "To new beginnings." We all drank, the crystal singing as glasses touched. I glanced at the clock, 8:20. 10 minutes. Ethan was getting restless, his hand moving to his jacket pocket where he thought the ring waited. I saw Elodie notice, her smile sharpening with anticipation. She'd probably already calculated the ring's value, knew exactly which dealer would give her the best price. "Before dessert," Ethan began, starting to stand. The doorbell rang. Everyone froze. I felt, rather than saw, Elodie's sudden tension, the way her parents exchanged glances. "Were we expecting anyone else?" Karen asked. "I'll get it," I said, moving toward the door with deliberate calm. My hand was steady as I turned the knob, revealing 2 officers in Immigration and Customs Enforcement uniforms. "Mrs. Monroe, I'm Officer Martinez. We received a report about potential visa fraud at this address. May we come in?" Behind me, I heard a chair scrape against wood, the sound of crystal hitting the floor. When I turned, Elodie's face had gone pale as bone, her mask finally cracking. "Of course," I said, stepping aside. "Please, come in. We were just having dinner." Officer Martinez entered the dining room with professional precision, his partner following close behind. The badge on his chest caught the candlelight as he surveyed the scene, the elegant table, the frozen guests, the woman in cream whose knuckles had gone white around her wine glass. "I apologize for interrupting your holiday dinner," Martinez said, though his tone suggested he wasn't sorry at all. "We're investigating reports of immigration fraud involving a Romanian national using the false identity of Elodie Laurent." The silence that followed was absolute. Even Karen Hendricks, for once in her life, had nothing to say. "This is ridiculous," Elodie said, her accent thickening with stress. "I am French citizen. My papers are in order." "May I see your identification, Miss?" Ethan stood up, confusion and anger warring on his face. "What the hell is going on? This is my fiancé." "We're getting engaged tonight." "Sir, please sit down," the partner officer said calmly. "We just need to verify some information." Elodie reached for her purse with trembling hands, pulling out a French passport. Martinez examined it under a small UV light he produced from his pocket. "Interesting. This passport was reported stolen from the French consulate in Montreal 3 years ago." "That's impossible," Marcel interjected, standing, but I noticed he'd already moved closer to the door. "My daughter's papers are legitimate." Martinez turned to him. "And you are Marcel Laurent, her father." "Really? Because our records show Marcel Laurent died in Marseille in 2019. He pulled out his phone, showed a death certificate on the screen. "Would you care to explain that, Mr. Volkov?" The name hit like a thunderclap. Simone gasped, her hand flying to her throat. In that moment, the carefully constructed facade crumbled entirely. "I want a lawyer," Elodie said, her French accent completely gone, replaced by something Eastern European. "You're not under arrest. Yet." Martinez turned to face the table. "But I do have some questions. For instance, can you explain these?" He produced a tablet, swiping through documents, bank statements showing regular deposits from something called CB Enterprises, marriage certificates from Oregon and Maryland, wire transfers to Romania. "Where did you get those?" Elodie's voice had turned sharp, dangerous. "Your employer, International Business Solutions, doesn't exist." Martinez continued. "The address is a mail drop. The phone number routes to a burner phone. Your entire professional history is fabricated." Ethan sank into his chair. "Elodie, tell them this is a mistake." She turned to him, and for a moment, something flickered across her face. Regret, calculation. "Ethan, darling, don't." The word ripped from my throat before I could stop it. "Don't you dare call him darling!" Everyone turned to stare at me. I stood, walked to the sideboard where I'd placed a folder an hour earlier. "I have something to add." "Mom." Ethan's voice was small, confused. I handed the folder to Martinez. Recordings of phone conversations, in French and Romanian, discussing timeline for marriage, divorce proceedings, and anticipated settlement amounts. Elodie's face transformed then, from wounded innocence to something feral. You recorded me. You fucking bitch. Language, Martinez said mildly, reviewing the documents. Mrs. Monroe, how did you obtain these? I hired a private investigator when I overheard her discussing her plans in my garden. She thought I didn't speak French. I looked directly at Elodie. No, Anka. Pas mal pour une Américaine. Non. The woman who'd played my son's fiancée laughed then, bitter and sharp. You knew. All this time, you knew. I knew the moment you called my son naïf, sentimental, a mark. I kept my voice steady, though rage burned in my chest. You chose the wrong family. Marcel and Simone had edged toward the door, but Martinez's partner blocked their path. No one leaves until we sort this out. We've done nothing wrong, Marcel protested, his French accent slipping into Russian. We are actors, hired for a job. Conspiracy to commit fraud is a felony, Martinez informed him. Sit down. Karen Hendricks had her phone out, no doubt texting the entire neighborhood. Tom was pouring himself another bourbon with shaking hands, and Ethan, my son, sat staring at the woman he'd planned to marry like he'd never seen her before. Is it true? He asked quietly. Was any of it real? Anka looked at him, and her mask finally dropped completely. The soft femininity disappeared, replaced by exhausted pragmatism. You want truth? Fine. My name is Anka Petrescu. I'm 28. I've been in this country 4 years, 3 of them illegal. Yes, I was going to marry you for papers and money. The ring, Ethan whispered. You were going to take my grandmother's ring. Worth $40,000 at least, she said with a shrug. More if you know the right dealer. He stood abruptly, the chair falling backward. I loved you. I know. For the first time, she sounded almost genuine. That was the point. Martinez cleared his throat. Ms. Petrescu, you're going to need to come with us, Mr. and Mrs. Volkov. You as well. Wait, I said. Everyone looked at me. There's more. She's not working alone. There's a network. Anka's eyes narrowed. You don't know what you're dealing with. Konstantin Bogdan, I said, watching her face pale. Quebec. Takes 40% of every settlement. Runs at least 12 women across the country. How could you possibly? The same way I knew everything else. I turned to Martinez. My investigator has a full file. Names, dates, victims, everything you need. You stupid woman, Anka hissed. You have no idea what you've done. These people don't forgive. Neither do I replied. Martinez nodded to his partner, who produced handcuffs. Anka Petrescu, you're under arrest for immigration fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit fraud. As they cuffed her, she looked at Ethan one last time. For what it's worth, you're a good man, better than most. Don't, he said, turning away. Just don't. They led her out, along with the Volkovs who'd gone silent and resigned. The dining room felt cavernous in their absence, the beautiful meal growing cold on the table. Karen stood, clutching her purse. Rachel, we should go, I said quietly. Please, just go. They fled, leaving me alone with my son in the wreckage of Christmas Eve. The candles still flickered, the jazz still played, but the warmth had been sucked from the room. Ethan picked up an overturned wine glass, set it carefully on the table. How long have you known? 2 weeks. And you let me... His voice cracked. You let me believe. If I'd told you without proof, would you have believed me? He laughed, hollow and hurt. I don't know what to believe anymore. The call came at 2:17 a.m. Noah's voice was tight with urgency. Rachel, they got away. I sat up in bed, still fully dressed from the disaster of dinner. What do you mean? Konstantin Bogdan, the network. Someone tipped them off probably right after the arrests. By the time the Joint Task Force reached Quebec, the office was cleaned out. Nothing but empty desks and a burning barrel in the back alley. The other women, gone, every single one, 12 apartments across 6 states, all vacated within hours. I heard him typing rapidly. But here's the thing, they're not running. They're regrouping. A chill ran through me despite the warm room. How do you know? Anta made a call from custody. One call to a lawyer who doesn't exist. The number traces to a burner phone that pinged off a tower near your neighborhood. I moved to the window, peering through the curtains at the empty street. They're watching. More than that, Claire just called someone tried to access your financial records through a banking backdoor. Professional job. They're looking for leverage. I thought of Ethan, who'd left after midnight without saying goodbye. My son. Already has protection. I've got someone on him. This was supposed to end tonight? You exposed one tentacle, not the octopus. Noah paused. Rachel, these people have lost millions in potential revenue. They're going to want payback. Let them come, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. That's not a good, no, listen. They're angry, which means they'll be sloppy. And we have Anka. She's not talking. Lawyer advised her to stay silent. I smiled in the darkness. She doesn't need to talk. She just needs to think she's winning. The next morning, I drove to the federal detention center where they were holding Anka. The guard who led me to the interview room looked skeptical. She's refused all visitors. Tell her Rachel Monroe wants to discuss a deal. 5 minutes later, Anka entered in orange jumpsuit and shackles, her carefully constructed beauty stripped away. Without makeup and styling, she looked younger, harder, hungrier. Come to gloat, she asked, sitting across from me. Come to offer you a way out. Her laugh was sharp. Right. The woman who destroyed my life wants to help. I want Konstantin Bogdan. You give him to me. You walk away with a plea deal. 2 years minimum security, then deportation. Versus 20 years federal, no parole. And that's if your friends don't get to you first. I leaned forward. How long do you think Konstantin lets failures live? Something flickered in her eyes. Fear. You don't understand, she said quietly. Konstantin doesn't just run romance scams. That's the small money. He's connected to things you can't imagine. Try me. She studied my face. Human trafficking, drug routes through Eastern Europe, money laundering for cartels. The marriage fraud is just washing cash and getting assets. She laughed bitterly. You think you've won something? You've painted a target on your whole family. Then help me paint one on him instead. Why would I do that? I pulled out my phone, showed her a photo Noah had sent. Because 3 hours ago, this woman entered the country using your sister's passport. Anka went rigid. Mara's in Romania. Not anymore. Konstantin brought her here. Insurance. I'm guessing. To make sure you don't talk. You're lying. I swiped to the next photo, Mara Petrescu at JFK, being met by a man matching Konstantin's description. She's staying at a motel in Queens. Room 12. Registered under another stolen identity. Anka's hands clenched. If anything happens to her, help me, and nothing will. Stay silent, and Konstantin decides what happens to both of you. She was quiet for a long moment, calculating. Then, I need guarantees, witness protection for Mara, reduced sentence for me, and immunity for anything I reveal about the operation. I can make those calls. No, I want it in writing, from the federal prosecutor. Today. I stood. I'll need something in return. Proof you can deliver, Konstantin. She smiled then, the first genuine expression I'd seen from her. Check your email in 1 hour. I memorized every account, every contact, every safe house. Your son wasn't the only one with a head for details. By 5 p.m., the federal building in Charlotte was buzzing with activity. Claire had pulled every string she had, and somehow we'd assembled a task force that included FBI, ICE, and even Interpol liaison officers. Anka's information had been gold bank accounts in Cyprus, shell companies in Delaware, and most importantly, Konstantin's real location not Quebec, but a compound in rural Virginia. Noah coordinated with federal agents while I sat in a conference room with Claire, watching surveillance feeds on laptops. Constantine's compound looked like a normal farm from the outside, but thermal imaging showed at least 15 people inside, and vehicle registration traced to known associates across the criminal spectrum. "This is bigger than marriage fraud," the lead FBI agent, Deborah Sullivan, said. "This could be the break we've needed on the entire Eastern European syndicate." At 7:43 p.m., the first wave went in. I watched on the screen as black SUVs surrounded the compound, agents in tactical gear moving through the darkness. The radio crackled with coordinated commands. "Target acquired," someone said. "Konstantin Bogdan in custody." But something was wrong. The thermal imaging showed people scattering, more than they'd expected. Then came the gunfire short bursts that made everyone in the conference room tense. "Officer down!" The radio exploded with activity. "We need medical." The feed cut out. Sullivan was on her phone immediately, barking orders. Claire gripped my hand as we waited, minutes stretching like hours. Finally, Sullivan returned. "We got him, Constantine and 12 associates. But there was resistance. 2 agents injured, non-critical. The documents, computers, phones, everything. It's the intelligence gold mine." She looked at me with something like respect. "Your investigator was right. This is the whole network." But I wasn't celebrating. Something Anka had said echoed in my mind. The marriage fraud is just washing cash. "What else did you find?" I asked. Sullivan hesitated. "Shipping manifests, transportation routes, lists of cargo. People, among other things." She gathered her papers. "Mrs. Monroe, what you've done here, it's going to save lives. Dozens, maybe hundreds." But all I could think about was Ethan, who hadn't answered my calls all day. I'd saved strangers while destroying my son's faith in love, in me, in everything. The victory felt like ashes in my mouth. The news broke on December 26th. Every major network carried the story. International crime ring dismantled in Christmas Eve raid. They showed Constantine's mugshot, the compound in Virginia, the dozens of victims coming forward. Karen Hendricks called 15 times. I didn't answer. By December 27th, federal prosecutors had filed charges against 43 individuals across 12 states. The romance scam was just the tip underneath lay human trafficking, drug smuggling, money laundering operations worth hundreds of millions. Ansa Petrescu became the star witness, her testimony shredding the network's entire infrastructure. I watched it all unfold from my kitchen, alone. Ethan finally came on December 28th. Using his key at 3:45 p.m., I was in the dining room, still cleaning up from Christmas Eve. The turkey carcass had gone bad in the refrigerator. The roses in the centerpiece had wilted, petals scattered across the tablecloth like accusations. "The FBI came to my apartment," he said without preamble. "Wanted to know if I had any documents, gifts, anything from her." "Did you?" "A watch, some books. They took it all." He sat down heavily in his father's chair. "They said you're a hero, that you saved dozens of people." "I'm not a hero." "No," he agreed. "You're not." We sat in silence while shadows lengthened across the room. Finally, he spoke again. "You could have told me." "Would you have believed me?" "I don't know. Maybe not. But you took that choice away from me." He looked at me then, and I saw David in his eyes, that same capacity for hurt, for disappointment. You watched me fall in love with her, knowing what she was. You let me plan a proposal, a future, a life, all while you were planning this. She would have destroyed you. So you destroyed me first." The words hit like physical blows. "Ethan, I can't look at you right now." He stood, pulled something from his pocket. The ring box. "Take this. I don't want it anymore." "It's yours. Your grandmother wanted—" "My grandmother would have told me the truth." He set the box on the table between us. "You know what the worst part is? I keep thinking about things she said, moments we had, trying to figure out what was real, and I can't trust any of it. I can't trust my own memories. and I can't trust you." He left then, and I didn't try to stop him. The ring sat on the table, my grandmother's diamond catching the late afternoon light. 3 carats of tradition, of family, of love that was supposed to last forever. I opened the box. The ring was still perfect, untouched by the chaos around it. I thought about my grandmother, who'd worn it for 53 years, about my mother, who'd kept it safe for me, about the granddaughter I might never have now, who would never wear it. Noah called that evening. Constantine flipped. He's giving up the entire Eastern European network in exchange for witness protection. The FBI estimates this will prevent hundreds of fraudulent marriages, save millions in stolen assets. Good. Rachel, you did the right thing. Did I? I walked to the window where I'd first heard Anka's real voice, speaking poison in French. My son won't speak to me. My neighbors think I'm some kind of vigilante. I saved strangers and lost my family. He'll come around? Maybe. Or maybe some wounds don't heal. That night, I burned everything from Christmas Eve. The tablecloth, the napkins, even the dress I'd worn. I stood in my backyard watching silk and linen turn to smoke, thinking about choices and their costs. Claire came by the next morning with coffee and case files. Anka's testimony is solid. She's getting 5 years, eligible for deportation after 3. Her sister's in witness protection. And the victims, getting their money back, mostly. Some are pressing civil suits. She paused. One of them wants to thank you, Michael Chen from Oregon. She took him for $300,000. Tell him he's welcome. You should be proud, Aunt Rachel. What you did? What I did was necessary. That doesn't make it right. She left the files, though I didn't read them. What was the point? The network was destroyed. Constantine was in custody. Anka was behind bars. Justice, if that's what this was, had been served. But justice, I learned, tastes nothing like victory. I kept the ring on the kitchen counter where I could see it every morning. A reminder of the Christmas Eve when I chose to be the villain in my own son's story, to destroy his love in order to save him. Some mornings I reached for my phone to call him, but what would I say that I was sorry I wasn't, that I'd do it differently? I wouldn't. The truth was simpler and more terrible. I'd made my choice the moment I heard her speaking poison in French. Every mother becomes a monster when her child is threatened. The only difference was that I'd been a successful one. 3 weeks later, a package arrived with no return address. Inside was a single photograph Ethan at a coffee shop, taken from across the street. On the back, someone had written in Cyrillic script. Claire translated it for me, "Debts remain." I burned that too, then called Noah. They're still watching. I know. We all are. This isn't over. Rachel. No, I thought, looking at my grandmother's ring. It never is. When you choose revenge, even righteous revenge, you don't get an ending. You just get consequences, spreading like ripples from a stone thrown in dark water. But if I had to do it again, if another predator circled my son with honeyed words and false promises, I knew exactly what I'd do. I'd destroy them all over again, and I'd pay the price, whatever it was, because that's what mothers do. We become the monsters our children need us to be, even if it means they never forgive us for it. The ring caught the morning light, throwing rainbow patterns on the wall. Somewhere in Charlotte, my son was waking up free and safe and heartbroken. Somewhere in federal prison, a Romanian woman was testifying against an empire of lies. And somewhere, always somewhere, another wolf was putting on sheep's clothing, looking for the next innocent to devour. But not my son. Never my son. That would have to be enough. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Rachel's place? Your perspectives mean everything to this community.